I'm grateful President Trump has the courage and the willingness to put the names on a list and let everybody know what was going on this island that Epstein owned.
Thank you all for being here. And the chair recognizes the ranking member of the entire committee, Mr. Raskin, for his 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. The most famous child sex trafficker of our time, I venture a guess, is Jeffrey Epstein, a man of extraordinary wealth, power, influence, and connection, a good friend of Donald Trump's, actually, and other politicians, who used his resources in order to exploit girls. I'm wondering if, Ms. Brueggemann, perhaps you could start, if you would explain basically how sex traffickers work and how they are able to get access to underage girls and to exploit them for their purposes.
Thank you for the question. Sex traffickers work in many different ways to target vulnerabilities of the individuals they're targeting to exploit. So for young people, it's often through grooming, through approaching them, and offering things that they're not getting at home. Whether
so in his case, he had a woman, I think her last name was Maxwell, who worked with him, and then she would procure the girls by giving them gifts of money or clothing or invitations to parties, that kind of thing.
My understanding is, yes, that there were people were being approached and offered financial rewards and benefits, an opportunity to come to parties, but we're not told exactly what was being expected of them, what would happen once they arrived, and then they had difficulty to not consent to what was happening and were entrapped in that situation.
Yeah, and so they tended to be poor who are vulnerable from a more, like a broken home or dysfunctional family situation, right?
Yeah, I think what we've heard from our witnesses is that people are targeted in different ways. So it might be because they were low income, it might be because they have an insecure immigration status, it might be because they're queer and not being respected by their communities, it might be because they're seeking validation and love and attention. So there are lots of ways to target folks.
Okay, so you had an interesting colloquy about the law of prostitution. I know that's not what this is about, but I'm just wondering, did the law criminalizing prostitution and putting women in jail for prostitution help any of the girls who were trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and his network?
Exactly, no. The criminalization of people engaging in the selling of sex does not help anyone. It makes them more vulnerable, more at risk, and unable to come forward for assistance if they do experience abuse and exploitation. And the criminal records, as we've heard, follow them throughout their entire lives.
Okay, I've got an article I'd like to submit for the record about Elon Musk's business empire is built on $38 billion in government funding.
Without objection.
If I could, from the Washington Post. That's a lot of money. People are getting a lot of money from the U.S. government for different purposes, and I hope that our oversight committee will be able to ferret out the waste, fraud, and abuse in a lot of these programs, But how much money, you were asked the question, how much money does your organization get? And I know you're a consortium of how many different organizations?
Right, so we do have 89 different members. We also have staff ourselves, so we receive direct federal funds in order to run a program to help survivors clear their criminal records. We provide training and technical assistance to housing providers, and we're also working on other training and technical assistance programs. And then our members have different funding that they get directly.
And so how much money did you get in government grants and funds?
So we get the amount, as Mr. Biggs pointed out, I think it was around 2 million in that one
2 billion?
grant year. Million.
Oh, 2 million,
no,
okay.
yes.
Because I was talking about Musk with 38 billion, and you said
Nice.
2 million for all of the consortium of...
Over a period of 3 years.
So perhaps I come to you, Ms. Lopez. What would the effect be of actually demolishing government funds, grants to all of these organizations? There are some people who just want to shut it all down, and what would that mean?
I can't speak to other organizations, but I can tell you Pearl at the Mailbox will never accept government grants.
And how come you don't accept government grants?
Because we want to be able to continuously employ the people that we choose to employ, and we don't want to be beholden to another agency that tells us what to do.
Okay, and Ms. Cooper, what do you think the effect would be of a shutdown in government funding?
Well, I think anti-human trafficking and child exploitation efforts have been historically underfunded. So really, we need more funding for enforcement efforts, for demand reduction. But I think that it's really important to clarify that there's good funding and there's bad funding. And good funding needs to go to support law enforcement. It needs to go to support survivor care. It needs to go to support legal services. But bad funding would be funding that supports the full decriminalization, and that means funding that supports decriminalizing brothel keeping, pimping, and sex buying. What we need is an increase in efforts to enforce those third-party profiteers that profit from prostitution.
Thank you very much.